Hello, Keith Rucker at VintageMachinery.org. Well, guys, we are still working on restoring the Monarch lathe, 16-inch Model K, and the next big step for me to do is I want to get this the apron here on my lathe torn down. I want to go through, inspect everything, and see about getting this thing cleaned up, repairs made, see what we need to do to it, get it repainted and repaired and put back together. So let's get in here and start figuring out how to tear this thing down. It's going to be a journey. First thing I want to do is get this feed rod removed from the actual apron. It goes through a part in there. There's a keyway, and the way this is made, it only comes off on this end. The keyway doesn't go all the way through. And this end, of course, has got a gear down here that drives it that goes up into the quick change gearbox, and there's a bushing here that connects it in there. This is attached with a tapered pin, so we're going to try to knock this out. I'll see how easy this comes. Probably gonna be a pain. I've got this jacked up just so that I've got something up underneath it, something solid to hit on without bending the shaft. Okay, it's gonna go. There it goes, good deal. Get that pin out. There we go, very nice. And that's gonna come right off, it looks like. There we go. Now that should just come right off, hopefully. I mean, it's going to be a little tight, but it comes off. Just a bronze bushing in there. And then we got this piece, and it looks like it had a tapered pin in it at one time and a set screw, but there's no pins or screws in there. It's just kind of up on there. So, I don't want to beat that up too bad. Let's see if we can see if it moves. Yeah, it's going to come on off. That's good. There's a hole there where it's supposed to have been pinned, but the pin was gone. We'll replace that when we put it back together. We should be able to now slide. Let me put this pin. I like to put these pins back in the part they come out of, just so I can keep them straight. And we'll go ahead and slide that rod back out the other end. All right, this rod should come out without too much trouble. There we go. All right. So we'll start on the front here. First thing I'm going to try to do is get the hand wheel off. One thing I noticed here, an awful lot of slop in there. So I'm guessing that we got keyway issues in here. We will know better when we get this off. Let's see if I can get this started. There we go. So we got a good keyway in there. And the Woodruff key looks to be pretty good. So I'm not sure where that slop was coming from. It's all tight in there. But it sure was slipping. We'll, I guess, deal with that when we put it back together. Here we got a roller bearing, a bushing there on this side, and I imagine that this is just going to push out the inside. So this whole assembly here should just come right out the back, and it wasn't going, and I was sitting here trying to figure out what's going on. And what's happening is there's you can't really see it. I can't get my camera down there to show it to you, but there's an eccentric machined on this shaft. There's a little cam there that has a little arm that comes up from an oil pump. So as you turn this handle, it's pumping a lever in there that pumps the oil in all over this saddle. So you fill up an oil reservoir in here, and it pumps oil as you're as it's moving back and forth as this hand wheel's turning, which is kind of a neat way to power it. The problem is that little lever, though, is not allowing this to go past, so I'm going to pull this little side chest off, this little oil chest off, and maybe that oil pump will come out the side. I'm not exactly sure how that's going to go yet. Let me get some Allen wrenches and we'll pull that off. All right, so this should be the last screw holding this pump on. Let's see, it'll come on off, yeah. Whoa, that's a dirty, grimy mess down in there. Bunch of dried up oil. Got a gasket around here that's falling apart. We'll have to make a new one of those. All right, let me get that cleaned up before we go too any farther here. So there's a close-up of all that dried up grease and slime and everything else down in there. I'm gonna shut the camera off. I'm gonna get dirty here, so let me get this cleaned up where we can take it apart now. So I'm not gonna call that clean, but I wanted you to see this. This is the pump over here, and I'm not exactly sure where that cam comes through this, but I wanted you to kind of see the action going on here. So as that turns, it pumps that handle, and there looks like there's a fitting down here in the bottom that goes up and feeds into all the passageways in here. So I think that arm comes out in here. Yeah, you can see that little piece raising up right there. So let me take these screws off and see if we can get that off, and that'll go to the parts washer to get cleaned up. Okay, and that goes to an oil line right there. Okay, and there's that little lever that goes up against that cam. That's what was holding that in. I'm going to take this on over to the parts washer. Before I can get this out, it looks like I'm going to have to take some more stuff off the back side. So we're just going to continue across the front here trying to get these pieces off. Next thing I'm going to work on are these little clutch levers. This engages the feed and the longitudinal travel as well as the cross feed. There's a little castle nut in here that you can adjust, and I'm going to see if I can get these out. Little cotter pins out first. There's one. So now the little castle nut should turn off. There's no flats on these nuts, so I'm just using the little slots in here with a screwdriver to turn this off. These castle nuts are so you can adjust these to get these clutches as tight as they need to be. And we'll of course have to adjust all that when we go to put it back together. All right, there's one off. Little bearing back there behind that. Little thrust bearing. Okay. There's that one down. Same thing over here. And got that one off. Whoa. All Alright, looks like the thrust bearing in this one is shot, but I should be able to find a replacement one of those. Probably just replace both of them. I'm not going to worry about trying to salvage that. Got this little cover plate here. Looks like one of the bolts is partially out at the top, perhaps cross-threaded in there. It doesn't look like it's going straight to me. Let's see how that comes out. That's the one that doesn't look right to me. Can't really tell anything right now other than it looks like it's going in there crooked, but I'll deal with that later. So we got this handle here that opens and closes the half nut, and looks like there's a pin going through here. I'm not sure this is a tapered pin or not. I tried measuring both sides of it, and I think it's a straight pin. So we're going to try tapping it out. Well, it's not acting like it wants to go that way. So let me see if I can make it go the other way. There it comes. And I do believe that is a tapered pin. So I didn't want to come that up one way. And that handle comes off again. I will go ahead and put my tapered pin back in there so I know which pin goes with this part, and we'll worry about that in a minute. Figure out how to get that out. There's another nut right here that goes through here that connects to a whole gear train, and this looks like what's going to release all that out. So what I need to do is figure out how to get that where it won't spin so that I can get that loose. There's actually a little small gear on the back side back here, and I'm going to take a pair of pliers and kind of grip that, and then come over here and see if we can't. Of course, it wants to be really stubborn. See if we can get lucky. Yeah, okay. That wasn't near as bad as I thought it would be. We got that broke loose. I'm looking to see if there's any pins or anything in this collar. No, it just comes right off. There is a keyway right there. It's like a Woodruff key. Okay. I've flipped it around now, and we're looking on the back side, and I'm going to go ahead and start taking some stuff off on this side. It's all got to come off, and I don't think we can really do anything else on the other side. So we're just going to start tearing into this and pulling parts off. Okay, these little blocks here I think help hold in this bar. Got a little nut here, or bolt. A couple little Allen screws down here. Just a little cover. All right, that little piece fell out from behind back here. Is we're going to put that screw right back in there so we know where that piece goes. I think I'm going to try to take this off. There's a set screw on here, but it's full of grease and crud. So let me see if I can get that cleaned out where I can actually get that wrench down in there. Okay, that's a little worm gear that powers the threading dial. So that goes right up against the the feed rod or threading rod and turns that. So we'll just again keep these parts together. Pull this little bracket off. So this is a little guard for that threading dial, but it doubles as holding in the half nut here as well. This is the nut that opens and closes when you turn the handle on the other side, that clamps down on the threading rod, so when you're cutting threads you can start and stop your threads. Okay, that should come right off. Okay, bottom half nut comes out and the top half nut comes out. And then this should come right through there. Very good. So now I'm going to see if I can push this gear on out the rest of the way. I'm just going to kind of tap it on out. All right, we have, I think, here we go. Got this out now. So there's a spacer in there, there's a bearing. Then there's a bearing on this side, and there's a gear that's now loose down inside the carriage here that I can't quite get out yet. I wish I could get this little gear out. It looks like that gear will come out. They barely made that hole big enough, and it's actually almost got like little teeth in here, or little holes where these teeth line up, like they drove it in there. Let me see if I can tap it out. Yeah. All right, there's a bearing and a rust washer or something on the inside here. I'm gonna pull that out, and we'll just kind of put these back in here so where they know where they go. All right, so now that gear is by and large out of the way. There is another bushing down in there. Let me see if I can get that out. All right, I think I got that out now. And that goes on that side. And there's a bearing in here that I'll have to knock out once I get all this other stuff out. All right, what a mess. Next piece to come out is I want to get this little idler gear. I say an idler gear. This is actually what goes up to the cross feed. So it goes into a gear up there that will feed the cross feed. There's a little set screw back here behind this, down through the casting, that we should be able to pull out. There we go. It's a little dog point set screw that should allow us to punch that out from the back side. And I've got a punch back here, and we'll just take a hammer. And that gear comes out. There's this little idler shaft, and we'll try to keep those together. All right, continuing down from the top, I think we're going to try to remove these two gears here next. There's a set screw that goes down into a keyway which I believe keeps it from spinning. And then I believe that this whole shaft is going to go out the front. So let me get this key out first. Here it comes. Sorry guys, we lost some audio here, so I'm going to narrate this. Basically what I'm doing here is I'm tapping that screw out, and I just took a socket and kind of slid over that so that I wasn't actually hammering on the screw itself. Got it loosened up, and you can see there the shaft is coming right out the back, and that's got some gears and other things on it. I just pulled one of the gears out, and you can see here, this is actually a clutch. That little surface right there rides up inside, that little cone piece fits up inside of a mating surface on the other gear, which is still in there. It's not going to come out quite yet. There's a spring in there. When you tighten that clutch down, basically you pull those two gears together and they mesh with one another. Otherwise, they're kind of spinning with each other. Right now, I'm fishing out some pieces, thrust bearings. Those fell down in the bottom, so I got my little magnet there, and I'm pulling those out. Just getting them out of the way, and we'll get those cleaned up here. Right here, we're cleaning those out, and basically I'm just going ahead and reassembling this shaft. And again, I like to do that so I can remember how things go back together. These are, again, the thrust bearing that's in there. I'm going to probably have to replace all these thrust bearings, and they're all in pretty bad shape. But anyway, slide that on there. So a little 3-piece thrust bearing. I think the next piece to go on there is going to be, let's see, what am I doing? Okay, yeah, so the next piece going there is the gear, and that slides on. There's a spring, again, that goes between those two gears, and the second gear right here, it's not going to come out right now. I got to take some other pieces out first, so we'll get to that in just a minute. Next piece we want to get at is there's another gear that is on this little train. I think it's going to come out the back side eventually, but I'm not exactly sure actually. But I do know that we got a little nut on here that's got a little lock in it. So back behind here there's a ring that's got little tabs in it, and you got these 4 little holes. We'll just lock down here on this bottom one. We're going to have to get that off of there and then spin that nut out. So I'm going to probably have to get in front of the camera to do this. So let me get down here and get that done. That's going to come on out. Nut. And the spanner washer back there behind, little star washer. This one fits in the keyway, and you bend over whichever one of those lines up with one of those grooves in the nut, and that locks it all in place. And it looks like the bearing is just going to come right on out, so we'll go ahead and take it right on out. All right, on the back side, there is a bronze worm gear, and it has a very similar arrangement on it, so I'm going to go ahead and bend all these tabs back out. Okay, that one is off. Out comes the star nut. Good. And the bronze gear comes off. This is a kind of a worm gear. and it's badly worn. I'm going to have to see about replacing this, I believe. I'm going to be doing some research into what my options are, and see if I can find one reasonably priced, hopefully, and if not, you may have to make one. Now we should be able to get this out. Well, that race is in there. It's going to have to come out with it. There's a hole in the casting similar to over here, and that gear just barely fits up in there. So let me get around the back side of this and see if I can get it lined up and see if we can drive that out. All right, it's got that race out of there now. Let's see if the gear set will go through there. This thing is like a jigsaw puzzle. So we're going to get this woodruff key out. Pull the bearing and the race out of there. Pull this gear out while I can reach it right here, and that one goes over here. Okay, there's a spacer. And that gear. So I'm gonna go ahead and slide these back together so I can remember how they go together. That, and I'm gonna hold off putting the brass gear on here right now, but I will put this nut on here just so it doesn't get lost. And have the same thing on this side. And again, just so it doesn't all get lost. Anytime I can put sub-assemblies back together like this and keep them together like this, it really helps when you go back to put things back together. We'll get all that cleaned up in the parts washer, but that will help greatly later on. Now we got one more gear shaft to come out of here. This is another one of the friction clutch gears, and I think it's going to come out the same way. I'm going to just tap it from the back side here. We've come out and we seem to have hit a roadblock. I forgot to pull my set screw out. That's probably my problem. Let me get my screwdriver and do that. All right, now let's see if that'll come on out. All right, here we come. All right. Again, I got all these gears down inside of here. I'm trying to get them out of here without dropping everything into the bottom. So there's the big gear, there's the clutch gear, and then there's a thrust bearing in there. Back side of the thrust bearing, small gear. All right, hang on, let me get my magnet again. There's that. Here we go. Thrust bearing's falling apart, but that's all right. So we'll replace it. All this goes up on this shaft. That goes on there. All right, I've removed my 2 oil lines that were in the way. And hopefully now, there we go, that gear comes out. Go ahead and put it back together over here so we can keep that straight. And that gear will come out as well. And I think for the most part, we have got this thing taken apart. I'm gonna put this oil line back down here where it goes. So I think all that's left to do now is to get this little worm gear out of the bottom. There's some thrust bearings here on either side. And there's the worm. All right. I believe that this apron is pretty well disassembled down to its bare casting, and what it needs now is a good cleaning. So we're gonna get all these parts over in the parts washer and do some scrubbing and get this thing cleaned up, and I'll be back after we do that. Well, I think we had a good day's worth of work here. We got this apron all taken apart, or at least for the most part taken apart. There's still a few little things I need to take apart on these gears and what have you. I did a initial cleaning, just put them in the parts washer, mostly degreasing. As I start putting this back together, we'll inspect every single part, clean it really good, get every little bit of thing off of it. Of course, the casting here has got to be prepped for painting. We've got to strip it down and get it painted, then start working on putting this thing back together. I'm gonna probably have to replace some bearings and stuff in here. Some of these bearings I'm just not real happy with. Some of these thrust bearings were just ruined. It needs a little bit of work. This gear here, you know, it's still usable at the moment, but there ain't much life left in it. So while we have it apart, I'm gonna see about either finding a replacement for this or making a replacement for it. I don't think I really saw anything else major to deal with on this apron, but we got our work cut out for us. But step 1's done, it's all taken apart. Now we can start working on getting it cleaned up, painted up, and put back together. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll catch you next time, and we'll start getting this thing put back together.